We are discussing your competition entry project for the new Museum of Architecture and Design in Helsinki, Finland. It was held last year, attracting 624 entries. For stage two, five anonymous finalists were selected last December, and the winner will be announced very soon, next month in September. Your entry did not advance to the second stage, but it is a very compelling project, and we will discuss its merits in detail. The new building site is on the waterfront in Helsinki's historic South Harbor district. If you could tell me about your vision for this prominent site.
I want to begin a little bit earlier. In 2009, I saw the pavilion of Sana in London in the Serpentine Gallery. So for me, that was a turning point, or let's say, I would say affirmation of things that I've been feeling for many years. For me, it was the most important architectural project I've experienced since the 1929 Nice Barcelona pavilion.
Wow.
For me, it really affected me emotionally, and it felt like a new announcement of a new era in architecture. First of all, it was the collapse of form. I know in the early avant-garde, many people talked about dematerialization, the age of glass, but this was a real experience of dematerialization. For me, it was a proof that the architecture has this ephemeral quality, can have that. And I think that really many things that I did after seeing that project were very influenced by that experience. And going back to Helsinki, what you see is there's an edge of a 19th century city planning, strong blocks and urban blocks, which give a very nice edge to the city. And then there's the waterfront. The waterfront is, I guess, in the past has been very, very active, and today it's not so active, but it's a service road plus additional area, and the geometry is also not so clear. The specific site for the museum, I really felt that there's no form that really can define appropriate monumentality to this project, which was supposed to be an iconic project. The idea of the project was actually to introduce something very fluid, transparent, translucent, basically defined more by the context, but than by itself. And it's always changing. I wanted to create an event there. Something will be created, and actually just meeting the form of the building, the reflections, everything would be something alive will happen there.
What are some of the main design and programmatic features of your proposal? If you could talk about, you just mentioned collapse of the form, but nevertheless, if you could talk about your form, circulation, materials, how would it look and appear?
It's not really the pedagogical museums of the past. It has to be something, and they kept referring to that. But then there are galleries, formal galleries. So basically, I was looking for a compact way to arrange all the requirements. And then basically all these technical requirements and the galleries were wrapped by a skin that basically the environment you're going into is inside. The building has two environments. One is the exterior, which is the skin, reflective skin, and which mirrors the environment and interacts with the environment. And the inside, it was creating environment of flow, and the form of the building actually is basically tries to bring the outside to the inside. So you're going into some kind of a You discover another dimension of the outside when you go inside.
If someone who never seen the museum, how would you describe it? What is it?
It's out of context. It's
But the building itself,
the building itself is basically a fluid form, a fluid form,
undefined.
undefined, a fluid form that it does relate a little bit to traffic issues and around it, but basically it's the site had such an irregular dimensions, so it was just like a flow. It was just a flow of like movement around it, sort of aerodynamic or hydrodynamic, whatever you want, a shape, a reflective surface that everything that happens outside um, would affect the building. And I guess it was a little bit inspired Anish Kapoor, sculpture.
What about the city itself? In recent years, Helsinki has attracted architects from around the world. A decade ago, there was an international competition held to design the Guggenheim Museum. So that was also, I'm not sure if it's the same location, but it's the same neighborhood, South Harbor.
Actually, yes, actually, it was the same site exactly.
Exactly the same site. Okay. It drew record 1,715 submissions. The winning project was not realized. Then 30 years ago, a competition for what became Chiasma Museum, designed by Stephen Hall, was built. So the building was completed just before turn of the century.
Yeah.
So did these two projects influence your proposal at all?
I don't think so. Actually, when you talk about 30 years ago, I feel it's a different era. The way I look at the world has changed. For me, the moment of that the change came to my consciousness was when actually seeing the Sana project in London. I followed this firm for a long time, but it's like it was very clear. The statement was very clear, and I think it's very different than the architecture that would be recognized as a possibility like 30 years ago.
And what would you say other influences you refer to? Sana, you already mentioned Anish Kapoor. What else would you name as kind of driving forces for your design?
Look, I would leave it for someone else to define my style, but I really feel my education was very Miesian. I studied in Illinois Institute of Technology in the Miesian days. I was proud. So this has had very strong influence on the way I do architecture. I really am attracted to clarity, simplicity, universal issues, but I'm like, unlike me, so I'm like more, I can like get into like a very strange point of view sometimes. When they get to different sites, different clients, I can like deviate and not always express the universality.
You mentioned earlier about this idea of collapse of the form. So, if not the form, what do you think your project would offer to the site, to the people, to the museum experience?
The collapse of the form I don't think it's such a contemporary idea. Actually, when you look at Mies, in a way, it's a collapse of the form. The only thing is that the Miesian days, it was the grid. The grid was universal, and the grid was the order of the world, and the grid was everything. But it was not about form; it was about space. So actually, it's not a new idea. And now you can't give up the grid. You can't, it's very convenient. You can't, whenever you design anything rectangular, you almost like have to work with a grid. But you see these issues already like in Corbu. He's introducing all kinds of like kidney shapes and things like that. That's why he designed a grid. He marked the grid with round columns, not with like, um, um, like an X shape, because already there was, something about the relationship between nature, things like that, like, so the collapse of the form is not something new, but it became for me with the Sana project that I saw in 2009, something that can make an impression. It's not a form, but it conveys a very, very strong experience.
What other inspirations did you use for your design apart from what you already mentioned and these qualities of transparency? What else?
Finnish spirit, simple, crisp, flow, alto. It's like a lot of these influences I really respect. I mean, Alto was also a big hero. The possibilities that really fascinate with the things that I do today is like with what you say, the collapse of form. So the grid is always there because it doesn't make sense to give it up. Different things can merge, nature and technology. Everything can blend. Everything is like more flexible. And what you see and what you really see and reflections and translucent spaces, all these are part of architecture, and it's not form. It's about a more open experience.
How would you describe your design process?
I really trust I trust my intuition a lot, even though I am a pretty straightforward guy. I work on the layout of a grid, structure, urban structure, form. This is the foundation, but I really trust my intuition. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to stay when the grid is really strong. I never challenge it. I mean, I respect it. I actually admire it. But when there's an opening, there is a different, I allow myself to open up to different things. I really believe that architecture is basically was the most important thing about architects is that they can really tell you how the thing is constructed and how it works, and you feel it. It's part of the experience. And I think this is the greatest meaning of making a space.
I like your quote, the most inspirational architect for me is Miss van der Rohe, but since I function in an imperfect world, I find comfort in the works of Le Corbusier.
These are the big heroes of mine, in the years of my education. Mies is very, very compelling. Mies is about, there's this term in German, Gesamtkunstwerk, a total work of art. The whole world for Mies is a total work of art. The whole world is a grid. And it's a very strong, very German, very compelling. In Corbu, I think that he highlights the situation. He also does a universal architect, but he highlights a situation. You can find your place. He's in Corbu's work, you can find your place. You can really experience a situation in a very strong way. With Mies, you always, he always puts you together with the whole universe.
What did you mean when you said architecture for me is a Torah which is learned and taught?
I think when I use that word, Torah, maybe I meant a revelation. Sometimes something becomes clear to you, becomes apparent, and then you make it happen. You try to make it happen to define what you realized. That's how I see it. That's why I see something, you come to a place, something is being revealed to you. And for me, it's mostly intuition.
When discussing your architecture, you use words and phrases such as vibrant space between reality and imagination. We always strive to respect the past. This time you mentioned collapse of form. You also talked often about clarity. You used the word simple, universality. The whole world is a grid, intuition, open, flexible. How else would you describe your architecture, and what kind of architecture do you try to achieve?
I think the first statement you said, that it's between imagination and reality. I think for me, every idea that comes to the world in your mind is so beautiful, abstract, and then you try to download it and make a reality out of it. And it's never what it should have been. It's never. Everybody would tell you that this is like the basic human condition. You have very, very big dreams, and then when you realize them, they're not exactly what it is. I think even the Greeks said that about art, that it's an imitation, it's not the real thing. The philosophy is the real thing. The philosophy is where like everything is possible. It's open, it's like abstract, and you bring it down to reality, there's a compromise. And the challenge is basically not to collapse to reality. If you collapse to reality, you lose the architecture. So that's why I say always the theoretical site is also between imagination and reality, every site. When I teach architecture, main effort is to make the students not give up and lose their idea, not to destroy it. It's so easy to destroy a good idea. It's like, and more, all these difficulties in reality. It's always there's a client, there's a site, there is this, money, but you have to really stick to what is important and not lose it. This is when you don't lose it, you have architecture.
Going back to the site for this competition, what was, in your case, the big idea, before you started relating it to reality? What was the inspiration, and why even, this is a competition. What are the chances that you win? So why not leave it at that point as an idealist kind of situation? And maybe that's how you win competitions.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I'm optimistic. Okay. And when I started to work on a project, I'm not sure I'm going to win. I'm not sure I'm going to win. And not every project you can win. It's just many of them are just attempts. When you're an entrepreneur, you know that every 10 proposals you give out, you get one project, It's the same thing. Almost every year I do a competition or something like that. And so I just saw it and said, oh, let's look at it. I can tell you that at the end, I was pretty happy with what I came out up with. And I was very disappointed with most of the entries. They meant there was nothing new. And it has to do probably with the era we live in. It's not like in the 20s in Europe. The world is pretty confused. People are very confused. So I guess also architecture is confused, and that's where we live at. But for me, that doesn't matter. I didn't win, but for me, I won because I have something. I have an idea that I managed to clarify. Could have been better, of course, because nothing is ever perfect. But maybe it's an opening for another step and another opportunity.